So from a public policy perspective, you're saying to government, there are some basic things that if it would do, we would be saving a ton of money.
Again, I don't know a nonprofit, not just a county program, but I mean, again, in terms of this population, because we're kind of unico, there's not another place that has the kind of the menu of services. Or the appeal, in the sense that this is where gang members go in really large numbers from all over the county. So there's not a zip code in the county that has a gang who hasn't seen a member from that gang walk through our doors, not a zip code. And so there we have it, and the city or the county can reinvent the wheel and start their own program.
But why?
But why would you when you got one that has a track record? Now
the economy is doing bad. Nonprofits have been hit, you know, the worst. How has Homeboy Industries been affected by the downturn in the economy? Have you had issues raising money?
Oh yeah, no question. I mean, we had Black Thursday, which was May 13th, where we laid off 330 people, trainees and staff. Now we've been able to raise enough money to return 100. Senior staff, keep all our services going. Our businesses were uninterrupted.
Okay.
But it was a dark moment, you know. But the city, when I say the city, I mean people in the city, they could have responded in one of two ways. They could have thought, sinking ship, we're not going to send you money. But that's exactly what didn't happen. They you know, almost $3.5 million in 45 days. And from all over the country. You know, I was on Fresh Air and a lot of news stuff.
Sure.
And I have a book. And then all that stuff kind of worked to people saying, no, we get what this is. So, even if public entity money doesn't get it,
so
the people have.
Right now, because you know this show is about being helpful to nonprofits. If people went to homeboy-industries.org, they could donate directly to Homeboy Industries.
That's right. And we have a thing also called the virtual car wash. So when, you know, 16 months ago when we sounded the alarm about how we're in trouble and how underfunded we were when we moved into this brand new headquarters, the homies said, let's have a car wash because, you know, that's what homies do. They have car washes.
Okay.
And then somebody said, yeah, well, why don't we have a virtual car wash? So we have this goal, which is get 1 million people to give $10 each. It's sort of in the Obama democratization of fundraising, where you get lots of people giving a little bit of money. So I don't know. I mean, we've raised, I would probably guess, $500,000 on the virtual car wash.
So I had a friend of Homeboy's come to the office, and he brought this bag. Is Jobs Not Jails, Homeboy Industries, and you know what's interesting? I have 3 daughters that you baptized. I always like to say that and remind you of that. I'm proud of that.
Yeah.
But what are you doing with this bag? And I thought it was interesting because I used it. In fact, my daughters reminded me as we're going to the market, and they said, Papi, we're going to use the bags from Homeboy Industries. And I said, absolutely, bring them on. And I estimate I saved about 6 plastic bags by using this bag. So why did you do this? Is this part of your fundraising strategy?
You know, some folks came to us, principally the actress Rosario Dawson, who this is her campaign to get, you know, kind of recycling, especially in the.
And who is Rosario Dawson?
She's an actress and been in lots of things.
Oh, okay.
And she's, and so I think particularly in the Latino community, she wanted to kind of raise the level of consciousness in terms of the waste, in terms of plastic bags and that kind of thing. Especially since it could well happen that that'll get outlawed at some point.
There's a bill going through the Senate right now to outlaw.
So, you know, here's a recycling symbol, and this was printed at our silkscreen factory. And so there are 2 kinds of bags. This is the one that's sort of made of recyclable material. And then there are other ones that are kind of nylon that'll be, you can reduce to a kind of a little ball. Okay. And make it easier to transport to the store.
So let's switch over now to your book, Father Boyle, because we do want to make sure Tattoos on the Heart by Father Gregory Boyle. I always thought it was funny, just a side note, how you know Father Greg Boyle, and you end up working in Boyle Heights, and you grew up only a few miles from Boyle Heights. I don't
Yeah,
want to
in
say
LA.
you were destined, and you were close to Boyle Avenue in Boyle Heights. Tattoos on the Heart. Reading this and spending time with my daughters over the summer, I had an opportunity to just take time as they were in the pool to read it, and I thought to myself, there's a lot of the use of the word God, there's a lot of the use of the word Jesus. If you're someone who is not religious, is this book for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's principally about kinship, and that's the last chapter, but that's really what the whole book is about. It's about, Mother Teresa had diagnosed the world's ills, I think, correctly when she suggested that we've just forgotten that we belong to each other. Well, that cuts across any kind of creedal sense or whatever anybody believes. The truth is we belong to each other. So how do we stand against forgetting that we belong? How do we reach a kind of compassion that, again, can be more spacious than it is? How do we imagine a circle of compassion and then imagine together that nobody's standing outside that circle? That's what the book is about. And obviously that cuts across religious lines. But, I'm a priest, I'm a Jesuit, I'm a Catholic. I can't write about stuff that doesn't matter to me. I have to write about stuff that only matters. And so that's the context. But I deliberately, the odd thing about the book is it's on sort of a no-fly list in Christian bookstores because of the language. So it's kind of rough language.
Right.
And because I'm, having stories and homies are talking and sometimes they're rough around the edges. No Christian publisher wanted to publish it. And there's a network of Christian bookstores, oddly, that somebody asked, do you carry this? And they looked on the computer and said, we've been told not to carry this, which is fine by me. I don't even care. I mean, it's number 3 on the LA Times bestseller list, and it's been on the list for 16 weeks. I'd much rather have it be a broad appeal rather than some kind of Christian niche appeal.
Right. Well, that actually might make me read it again to figure out what.
Well, it's also, I think it's about hypocrisy. I mean, as if Jesus or God cares about the language in that book. Shame on you. If you don't get what this book is about, that somehow it's about, when Jesus says that you may be one as the Father and I are one. Well, yeah, that's clearly a Christian concept and it comes from Scripture. But that's sort of the longing of human beings is that we be one. And that's what the book's about.
Several documentaries have been done on Homeboy Industries. You've been through hundreds of interviews, thousands of presentations, and you chose a particular style. This is not a memoir. It's a different style of writing, and as a Jesuit, one word that I've learned in working with Jesuits is discernment. Mm-hmm. And in choosing the style, and what was that process that you went through, that discernment process, in figuring out the style and what you wanted to get out of it? Not you personally, because knowing you enough, this wasn't about you. My thought was that you wanted to send a message, not even to the present, but to the future. What was that discernment nugget?
Well, the style of the book, I didn't choose the style of the book. It chose me.
Like Homeboy Industries.
Yeah, so this was like, because it's so filled with, I think the original title was Tattoos on the Heart, Stories and Parables from the Barrio, which my editor thought was too ethnic. So,
which I like, by the way.
Yeah.
Can I write it?
Yeah, and I clung to that for a long time. Then she was the one who put The Power of Boundless Compassion, and we fought. I'm okay with it now, but so it was mainly images, stories, parables, and I preach, in 25 different detention facilities on a rotating basis every Saturday and Sunday. And so I always tell 3 stories in my homily. And that's where all this stuff comes from. So I always, over the years, I've just sort of accumulated, probably 300 stories. I didn't use all of them in this book, but there's probably 200.
Just for the reader,
plus.
For the reader's sake, do you have a favorite? A favorite parable or favorite?
Oh gosh, no, I don't. And people ask me them, and a lot of them are so long and involved, and they're hard to tell. I guess I could tell one, because it's a story about transformation. And I remember I was at a camp after Mass, and the kids were lined up, and each one wanted to come and talk to me. So I was sitting on a bench like this. I finished with the kid. They want you to listen or give them a blessing, maybe confession, but usually not. And so I gave this kid a blessing, and he left, and I signaled the guy to come over. Well, his walk over was just all swagger and all chingon and all better than thou. And I go, here we go. And it was all posturing. It was all posing. He was like 15 years old. And he sits down. I shake his hand. I say, I'm Father Greg. What's your name? And he says, Sniper. And I go, dog, look, I doubt very much that you popped out of your mom. She took one look at your ass and said, Sniper. So he rolls his eyes. What's your name? He goes, Gonzalez. And again, he's still kind of in that mode. And I said, I know the staff here calls you by your last name. I don't like calling people by their last name. Hello, what's your mom call you?
Your birth certificate.
And he says, cabron. And I said, no cabe duda, I'm sure she does. Mijo, I'm looking for birth certificate here. What's your first name? Well, then he starts to get, again, the transformation. He starts to suddenly become almost 15, where he had been 30 years old when he was walking over here.
Man.
And he says, Napoleon. I said, wow, that's a very noble, historic name. I've never heard of it. I don't know anybody who's named Napoleon. I said, but I still don't think your jefita calls you the whole nine yardas. So do you have an apodo or some kind of diminutivo? What's your mom call you? Then I watched him go to this distant place he had never visited or hadn't visited in a long time. Suddenly he was so quiet and hushed, I had to lean in to listen. And he said, sometimes when my mom's not mad at me, she calls me Napito. But look at the transformation, from Sniper to Gonzalez to Cabron to Napoleon to Napito. That somehow he had retrieved the truth of who he was.
Someone loved him.
Yeah, but it was also you want kids to be returned to themselves, to the truth of who they are, that they're exactly what God had in mind when God made them. All that other stuff is nonsense. All that stuff is your neighborhood and how the staff sees you and names you've been called. And you want to arrive at the name your mom uses when she's not pissed off at you. And I always found that as sort of a parable of the transformation. In the end, everybody's got a whole wealth of pain. If you don't transform that pain, then you will continue to transmit it. And that's really key. And I think that's what happens at Homeboy, is the transformation of pain and the repair of attachment and the reconnecting to human beings.